So we are in the process of understanding the effect of time and space on our service to Hashem. We spoke about the service to Hashem being affected by space, that is location. There are places on earth where we are more sensitive to pick up the spirituality, and there are other places where it's a little harder to pick up. And Eliyahu and I were discussing, is it more difficult or it takes more effort? And we were talking about how in some places you have to work harder to maintain your level of position, because outside of the land of Israel there's Tumah, impurity, whereas in the land of Israel there's Kedusha. But the Alei Shur says that because there is Kedusha here, you have to actually work harder here than you would outside of the land of Israel, because of the holiness of the land, and that there are more opportunities to be tested by Hashem in Eretz Yisrael than outside the land of Israel. And the question is, are you up to the test?
Like what?
So all of you are here, and you're being tested. Well, the question is, if in Israel it's a little harder to make parnasa than in Chutz La'aretz. That's a big, big test. We talked about this in a previous year, right, today. So it really depends on what, we're looking at. The number one statistic that will increase your choice of marrying a Jewish girl, do you know what that number one is?
Living in Israel.
Living in a place where there's lots of Jewish girls. Simple. People think, if you send your kids to day school, then they'll be more likely to marry. It's true, yes. But the number one reason people marry Jews is because there's a lot of Jews around.
And they're close to the street.
If you move to South Dakota, it's going to be pretty hard, even if you went to day school. And you send your kids to yeshiva, but because there's nobody around. Let's talk about the effect of time again. There's a medrash in Kohelet Rabbah. Kohelet is one of the books that was written by Shlomo HaMelech. In English it's called Ecclesiastes. Don't get it confused with Ecclesiasticus, because that's another book called Ben Sira that's not in the Hebrew Bible. I know you've been wondering about this all your life. I wondered, what is Ecclesiastes and Ecclesiasticus? Now you know. So there's a medrash on Kohelet Rabbah to explain a lot of the verses that are in this book. And it says, one of the verses say, don't say that the first days were better than this, because you did not say this with wisdom. So, you shouldn't say, the rabbis teach, you should think that every generation that passes is similar to the generation that just passed. So our generation is really in the same level of the previous generation. And the previous generation is the same as the previous generation. So you shouldn't say that if Rabbi Akiva were here today, I would read before him. Or if Reb Zera and Rabbi Yochanan were alive, I would learn Mishnayos with them. Rather, every generation, and the rabbis in your generation, that's what you should follow. What does that mean? It means that a person should be wise to recognize the time that he lives in. And that understanding that the generation in which we live is part of who we are, parts of our essence. There's an aspect of us that is connected to the generation, to the time period that we're alive. And there's a reason for that. And every generation has ups and downs. Every generation. It's not a question of, well, if I only lived 20 years ago, then I wouldn't have these problems. Or if I lived 50 years from now, my life would be better. No, every generation has its ups and downs. Okay? And Today, if any of us lived at the time of the Tanaim, we wouldn't have any idea what they're saying. We wouldn't be able to understand what they're talking about at all. That is, every generation has the tools it needs to succeed in the goals that it has. You have the everything that you need in potential to reach the goals that Hashem has set for you. It's not that if you lived 300 years ago, or at the time of the Rambam, or the time of the Rashi, then things would be better. You don't have those tools. We don't have those tools. So there's a recognition that the person has to understand. You have to recognize that in the same way that we have the tools to live in our generation, but also we are given the spiritual tools to be able to deal with the spiritual challenges that our generation faces. The Tanaim didn't need the tools that we need to be able to defend ourselves against the internet. They didn't need the things that we need to do in order to control our use of the cell phone or video games. They didn't have this problem. But you have the tools to stop yourself. The question is, do you want to? If so, then do it. That's it. Okay, now that's the general concept of time. But there's also a specific aspect of time that you're going through, and you will be going through, Be'ezrat Hashem, different stages of life. How many stages of life exactly do we have? 3? The Gaon of Vilna says 4. We have 4 times in our life. Your childhood, when you're a young man, when you are an adult, I'm using those terms. And then your old age. So from 0 to 10, the Gra says you have a lot of power. You're like a leopard, right? You've got energy. And then from 10 to 20, right? He has to be very assertive. He has to work on himself. And then from 20 to 50, he gets married, has children, and he needs Yeshua, he needs help from Shemaim, from Hashem, for Parnasa, taking care of his wife and kids. And then from 50 to 70, then you're sliding down. So when we pass through these stages, in each stage we get different types of tools, kelim, and we have different types of challenges. I told you the story before, but I think it's very important. It's a very, very important story. This is a true story. I was walking my kids to school. So the 2 boys went to their school, and I'm walking with my daughter to her school. And I see this little kid. Maybe he's 3 years old, maybe 4. And he's holding a plastic bag that appears to be empty. And then on the other hand, he's got some sort of a bag in folders, I don't know. And he's banging it on the ground and crying like, boom, boom. What happened? So I stopped and I said, what happened? What? The bag ripped and the cookies that his mommy gave him fell on the ground. And he was so angry, so frustrated that he lost it. I won't tell you how we resolved it, just in case his mother watches, but it wasn't my idea.
You pick up the cookie.
I did not pick up. Somebody picked up the cookie and said, it's okay. here you go. And he's like, oh, okay.
5-second rule.
But that was, well, it was more than 5 seconds.
15-minute rule.
Yeah, 15-minute rule. That was probably 15 minutes. But it made me think. For that 5-year-old or 3-year-old, probably 3-year-old, it's not 5 years old, it was the end of the world. It was the end of the world. For us, it was like, what are you crying about? When you're a teenager, right, your friends, I don't know, something happens, this doesn't speak to you, it's like the end of the world. Crying, You're in college, right? Or you get fired from a job, I don't know, you get da-da-da, it's the end of the world. Oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? You get older, you have different, but the feeling is the same. You might be in different situations, but that 5-year-old, 3-year-old, you're going to act like that, just in a different situation, but that feeling, it still exists in each and every one of us. It just depends what the issue is. I won't cry when a cookie falls, right? But let's say when you have a cup of milk, a glass of milk or something, and it drops, and man, come on. And you get angry that you have to clean it up, right? You're like that kid. But it all depends on what's happening. But the general emotions, the frustration and the feelings that we have, stay with us, just depends on what situations we're going to lose it. The idea is that we are passing through stages of life, and in each stage we get different tools to handle what is going to be thrown at us. And we ask Hashem that we should be able to take the potential for good and to be able to actualize it in whatever situation we're given. That's the idea. That's the idea of how time affects our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And every day that goes by, we have a particular assignment to complete. Every day. You have X amount of mitzvahs to do, X amount of brachas to say, X amount of Torah to learn, X amount of chesed to do, X amount of controlling your anger, your jealousy, your other issues, X amount of all the things that we are battling inside. We have the assignment for the day. You go to bed, right? Boom, you get a check, and then you wake up in the morning, Friday morning, first thing, Tilas Yadayim, go to the restroom, get dressed, be at the minyan by 7:50. Right? That's it. That's the first thing you do. After that, figure out what to do. After that, it matters. Then you can start figuring out, what am I going to do? What about this? I got to talk to Shlomi about Shabbos meal. I got to get a haircut, do whatever it is. First, things first. That's the idea, that we have to work on the assignment of the day. Assignment of the day. And when you get to a level where you're learning the Shulchan Aruch, you'll see the Shulchan Aruch is organized according to your daily responsibilities, weekly, right, monthly and yearly. So you open the Shulchan Aruch, it starts with, what do you have to do when you open your eyes? Then what, and 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 so on and so forth. Has your whole day. But you have to understand that in every day that comes, you have different tools. And if you're aware of who you are, you'll notice when you wake up in the morning, some mornings you're gung-ho. You got a lot of power, energy, you're ready to go. You're davening really hard. And someday you can barely drag yourself out of bed. That's the challenge. The challenge is that based on the time and space, try to the best that you can to stay leveled. No dips. This is very unhealthy spiritually. You're trying to get to, you start out here like this, plateau. If you can even keep it going up like this, that's amazing. That's amazing. When you look at investment charts, right? Stock market, when you see something that's very volatile, it's going to be a dangerous investment. What you want is steady growth. I know people there is, well, the way you make money is you figure the high risk is that you make a lot of money. Okay, but we don't want to risk our spiritual life. What we want is this. And it's if we're not recognizing the opportunities that the location of where we are and at the time that we are living in, we're going to miss an opportunity. We're going to miss the ability to grow to the level that we need. The Alei Shur says that you have to understand that you can't step out of the time and space that you've been assigned. We're stuck. You're sort of 2017, right? Thursday, Turkey Day, right? 3 o'clock, Jerusalem or Sameach. That's where you are. That's where you are. We believe that the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives you so many days and so many years to live. And that the amount of time that He's giving you, giving us, is that we have to use it to achieve the level of perfection that He wants us to receive, to reach. So far, so good. So look at what the Zohar says. Vayikrevu yemei Yisrael lamut. And the days of Israel approached near death. So Amar Rabbi Chia, it says, Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim 17 shana. Yaakov lived in Egypt 17 years. So the question is, why is it when it's talking about him living, he's called Yaakov, and it's called him when he's dying, Israel? Why the switch? We're talking about the same person, right? When we're talking about him living, he's called Yaakov. When we're talking about him dying, we call him Israel. You hear the question?
Yeah.
Good. Amar Rabbi Yosi, Hachi hu vadai. He says, well, it is exactly like this, because it says, it doesn't say Yom Israel, it doesn't say the day of Israel dying, it's the days, plural. And usually people don't die for more than one day. Right? Nobody dies 4 days. You're either dead, which means you died that day, or you're alive. But it says the days of Israel's death are coming closer. Yom, it's plural, yomim, as opposed to yom. So that's what Rav Yosi asking. So, elahachitana. This is what you have to learn. When the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants the soul to return to Him, Kol inun yamim dekayim barnash b'hay alma itkidan kame ve'alin b'chushbana. All the days that the person was alive, right? So do the calculation real quick. How many days you were alive? If you lived 120 years, okay? All of those days would come up to the Kadosh Baruch Hu and would be evaluated each day. That is, each day, what have you done today? What have you done the day before? What have you done the day before? Every day is going to come before the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's what the Zohar says. And when they come at the end of the account, the person dies. And he says it would be a great merit for a person's days to come before the king without embarrassment and without days that he did not fulfill his obligation to Hashem. So the Zohar says. It would be a great merit if each day that goes up does not bring us embarrassment and doesn't show that we haven't done what we were supposed to do on that day. I am sure that if you're going to say to us, one day goes up and he says, hey, I was playing Candy Crush and I reached the level 79.
Wow.
Woohoo! I don't think that that's what you're going to be happy with up there. The question is, have you fulfilled the obligation to the Kadosh Baruch Hu? Therefore, begin kach. Ktiv b'tzidkiya kriva mishum de kriva yomoy kami malka bilo chisufa. So that when it's talking about a tzaddik like Yaakov Avinu, it says that the days come close to Hashem and there's no embarrassment. There is no embarrassment because he was close to the Kadosh Baruch Hu every day. And he was able to fulfill his obligation to Hashem. He was able to bring out all the potential and actualize it. But us, lowly us, what are we going to say? What are we going to say? That is the duty of paying attention to both time and to space. Because the duties being in yeshiva are different than if you were living back at home. Correct?
Yeah.
Kadosh Baruch Hu created an opportunity for you, Zach, to learn Torah. And he wants you to learn. And he wants you to do chesed. And he wants you to have a relationship with him. He wants you to pray to him. All those sort of things. Some of it is a lot easier to do here than if you were staying back home. But you have to seize the opportunity that you have before you. You have an incredible opportunity. This is a shot once in a lifetime. Even if Eliyahu came back. Because what are the chances? When the guys leave here, they always say, Rabbi, I'll be back, I'll be back. Not everybody merits to come back. Some of them get jobs, become kindergarten teachers.